Welcome back to the C Word. This is James. Another quick update. So, I think the number I just looked at was 181,580 cases worldwide, according to Johns Hopkins. And, Lord, it was 7,138 deaths. Those numbers are going up pretty damn quick now. And that's to be expected. You don't test, and you don't have a pandemic, and then once you test, you start seeing reality. So, where are we at now? Psychology. So, the slow trickle of information versus control of society. Calm people don't riot, of course, but also confused people don't riot. So, start this right. Initially, we don't know where the thing came from. The coronavirus, of course, the C word. We don't know where it came from or how it evolved, but it came from about 12 kilometers away from an RDNA lab that was doing research on bat SARS, and they had already had research papers that were put out that had HIV splicing to try to understand the coupling to the human body and the activation of that RDNA, I guess. I'm not a scientist. Just what I've read, and I've read a lot now. And they've had several instances in that same lab of things getting out accidentally. So, in the beginning, there was the word. That word was Wuhan. Wuhan, which most people hadn't even heard of, a good industrial district in China, a big industrial district in China, was the epicenter for this thing. So the first information we got in the United States, known to us, was that there was this terrible, terrible thing happening, and the Chinese government, the communist dictatorship that they are, was trying their best to isolate people and stop the spread of this thing. Then we found out it was a virus, and that's because they sent out the DNA the RNA sequence, very, very quickly. A little too quickly, but anyway, give the devil his due. And then we started seeing videos come out of people being, well, first it was people falling in the streets, walking and falling over, presumably dead. Then we saw large amounts of body bags being carried away, toted into trucks, hauled off. And then finally, before all of the feeds got cut, we got to see, well, not all of the feeds, but most of the feeds got cut. We got to see people getting physically taken from their houses, supposedly, and dragged into the streets and put into these isolation wards, along with the massive construction that they did. Really wasn't too massive. It was a bunch of connexes. They flattened some land, stacked some connexes, and called it a hospital, or two hospitals. So back to psychology. And back to confused people. So again, confused people do not riot. We don't know what it is. We don't know where it actually came from, but we think it came from bats. Now, In the United States, we know there were 360,000 Chinese students that came back to the United States after before this outbreak actually kicked off. And in relation to the Chinese New Year, they were there to visit family. This is their end-all, do-all holiday. You know, Christmas, New Year's, July 4th, all of it. That's what it is. No one talked about the students past the first report that came back and the initial number. It says 360,000 potential cases. Then we had a flight that came into Washington State. Well, everybody within 3 meters, 9 feet of the person, the suspected infected person on the plane, were brought in. But if you've ever flown, you know that in a plane, they recirculate the air. They have to pump in oxygen because at altitude, you have to have oxygen. It's a sealed capsule. Everybody breathes the same air. And one sneeze would fill that whole plane very quickly. I don't care if it's a 707, 737, 757, 7,000,007. Okay. We don't know what it is. We don't know where. We know where it comes from. We don't really know where it is. Pretty confusing. We have this one guy, this one person that might be infected, and these 12 or 15 people around him that we're watching. In the meantime, all of the flights that all of the students came over on, we didn't think about. And the 5 million people that left China, they hit every country on the globe. Obviously, that was the initiation of the spread of a pandemic. So, it could be everywhere, but we don't know. There are potentially now hundreds of thousands of people. The initial numbers were 4.6 to 1 RO, so that means 4.6 people can be affected by every one person, and then it's an exponential growth. The one person in, I think it was Italy, that they found that broke his quarantine, maybe it was England, I think it was Italy, decided he would break his quarantine and go to a bar. In 2 days' time, they found 1,300 people. 2 days, 1,300 people that he made contact with. That's not the surfaces. That's not the cars. That's not the walls he leaned against. That's not the glasses that he drank out of. But that bar trip was fun. So we get this slow trickle. The initial statements were, it is potentially here. Now we have before the testing. The tests are going to be coming. That somehow, nice message, somehow the World Health Organization and the CDC formulate the tests wrong that are sent to the United States. And we have to send them back. So, I don't know how many it was, 1 million, 2 million, 10 million. But what would have happened if 10 million tests would have been put out right at the beginning of this in the United States, and we'd have found out there were 3 or 4 million people that had it? Chaos. So we're still confused. We don't know how many are out there. We don't know who's got it. We don't know where it is. Then as these tests start coming in, every single state gets a dot. Conditioning. So now you know it's out there, probably in your state, and we don't have a cure, and we don't know how to handle this. As long as you keep the boogeyman in the dark, and he never shows his true face, There's nobody that can get mad at him or want to attack him or make a movie about him. Confusion. That's what they've done. Created a United States of confusion for the purpose of riot control. Now you're conditioned. It's here. And every media is doing it. All of them are doing it. Get used to the fact it's here. It's going to be everywhere. Everybody's going to be affected. If you think for a minute, one freaking second, that the U.S. government didn't know exactly what was going on in China, exactly when it happened, and every single damn thing that the Chinese knew about this disease, you're fooling yourself. If everybody had HIV, no one would give a damn about it. And if everybody has COVID-19, you can go back to work and you can make this country great again. Just a thought. Today's March 16th, 3 days after my birthday. 3 days after the declaration of a state of emergency in our great nation. Our republic is in jeopardy. Stand fast, brothers and sisters. This ride is just beginning.